So the term of the agreement shall terminate at midnight on this date. Typically, your contract will be for 6 months. Now, I personally don't like to do 6 months. I don't like to be locked in the contract either. I would prefer to do a series of contracts. The first contract will be for the first 3 or 4 houses. We go see, we get to know each other a little bit. I get to pay attention and see what it is that you like, dislike, what type of buyer you are. If you're the type of buyer that just wants to see houses, then I might not be for you because I like to look intelligently based on information. So the first thing that I'm going to do is pull up the seller's disclosure statement. If the seller's disclosure statement is properly filled out, then we will know whether the house is coming with a refrigerator, a stove, a washer, a dryer, whether it has heating systems or whether it has air conditioning. Whatever it is, it should be in the seller's disclosure statement. Also in the seller's disclosure statement will be whether the foundation has water leaking in the basement, whether the roof has a leak, how old the roof is, how old the furnace is, how old the electrical system is. Does it have an electrical system? Does it work? How about the plumbing? Everything should be in the seller's disclosure statement. Sometimes they won't be filled out because the seller may be exempt from filling it out. In such cases, then I'm still going to call and find out from the listing agent if there are any issues that I might need to be aware of before showing the house. Now, the thing of it is you really should know this information before you go see it because you may not have the money or be willing to shell out the money to make these repairs. And in those cases, you need to know in advance. And it's also going to determine how much you might be willing to pay for the property. Everything should be done with purpose. Everything should be done decently and in order. And an experienced agent will be able to help you in such a way that will be effective and efficient for you. Now, newer agents may just want to just go see a bunch of houses with you. They're still learning. But if you're going to pay for an agent, you should get what you pay for. And you pretty much do. Now, when we speak of paying, we skip down here to clause number 7. Compensation of broker. Broker's fee for services rendered is fully negotiable and is not fixed, controlled, or set by law, the MLS, or any other person not a party to the agreement. The broker fees are set by your agent, and you can negotiate, but typically 3% is what a buyer's agent is working for, and the same goes for the listing agent. There are times when they might require more, and there's times when they might accept less. Accepting less could mean, say for instance, you like a particular property and the listing agent has listed it and the buyer or the seller has agreed to pay 2.5%. And that's typical. Now it's up to the agent to decide whether or not they're going to say, okay, I'll do it for the 2.5%, or if the client is going to be on the hook for that other 0.5%. So the 0.5% in a scenario where we call it a $200,000 house. 1% of a $200,000 house is $2,000. So a 0.5% would be $1,000. So where the 3% would be $6,000, the seller is agreeing to pay $5,000 of the $6,000, and the client would have the extra outstanding $1,000 to be responsible for, and it would be due at closing. Now, some agents, including myself, plenty of times, I have just said, okay, I'll go ahead and do it for the 2.5%. That's looking out for my client. But that's not what it has to be. Because if we put 3%, which is typical, on this contract, then that's what it's saying, that you're responsible for that outstanding balance. Whether it's 0.5%, maybe it's 1%, maybe the seller is not paying a commission at all. And that's the case with off-market properties as well. If you want an agent, you're going to have to negotiate the price with them that you're going to pay in order to get them to do what you need them to do to accomplish your objectives. Because we're not in business to just spend money to help other people. We're in business to make money, as every business is. And then that which brings me to the different ways to be compensated. Because once this is done, it's supposed to be done. However, there is a way to change the terms at the last minute if necessary, if everybody agrees. In that case, you'll be really hoping to have a good agent that's willing to compromise, because we can do an addendum and change the commission rate to what the seller is offering. The different ways we can be paid are retainer fee, flat fee, commission, or any combination. And I typically will accept a retainer fee. Now, speaking of retainer fee, everybody hears retainer fee and they say, oh, no. But you're not paying extra. As long as it's within reason and according to the contract, the way it's set up. Because I start to charge hourly as well, but only after the terms that we stipulate in the contract. So let me read this, just so you get an understanding of what I'm saying. Retainer fee. The client will pay broker a non-refundable retainer fee of the agreed upon amount, which in my case is typically $500, due and payable upon execution of this agreement. The retainer fee shall be applied against the total commission due and is intended as compensation to the broker for the broker's efforts in locating the property for the client. The retainer fee cannot and will not be used as a part of client's earnest deposit when an acceptable property is located and a buy and sell agreement or offer to lease is constructed. Now, what that's saying is the retainer fee is non-refundable. But when you buy the property, it can be credited to you as a buyer. You're not paying the commission most of the time. So, at closing, provided that no other terms would cause you to lose the credit, then the retainer fee serves as a credit to you at closing. So just say, in my case, $500 will go towards your closing costs or down payment. It's yours. Simple as that. Now, if as is reasonable, we also decide on a hourly deduction, the hourly rate, which is legal. Then those hourly deductions can be deducted from that retainer fee. So if we say at $50 an hour, Some people may charge $100 an hour, maybe more. But in my case, I charge $50 an hour. So if we go see a house and I show the house, it's gonna take me an hour to get to the house. But I'm not gonna add in my travel time. But the showing is for 30 minutes. So that's 0.5 is a deduction. If I have to put an offer together, there might be a whole hour. That's a deduction. I will prepare a statement when I'm pretty much anyway, but when I'm deducting by the hour, I will prepare a statement so that we can have the cumulative total at the bottom, multiply it times $50 an hour, and you'll see how much will be deducted from the deposit. If you have work done that exceeds how much the deposit was, then when the deposit has been depleted, then it's time to submit a new deposit. Now, personally, what I do is I'll say I need a deposit, and you get 10, 15 houses, however many we agree on, because it's fully negotiable. And after that number of houses is exceeded, that's when I'll start to deduct. 15 houses is plenty if you're actually looking intelligently at the properties that you might really want to buy. If you exceed that amount, now we're in an hourly schedule until the expiration of the contract from clause 2. Like I said, my contracts are pretty much 90 days tops. But the first contract is going to be for the first few houses. The second time we sign, you might get 10 or 15 houses. If we exceed those, I need a deposit, and I'm still going to give you 10 or 15 houses. And once those are exhausted, that's when we start with the deductions. And like I said, you will get a statement. But those are ways that agents can be compensated for assisting clients with their purchases, because there's no other way to be compensated, and everybody doesn't close on a home. However, regardless of what, bills still need to be paid, including personal bills and operational expenses. We need to have operation expenses covered, if nothing else, because we're helping you with your endeavors, the things that you want to do. And who should pay for those things? You. But if you buy something, like I said, if you're not paying the commission, then that deposit goes back to you as a credit. So, moving on. Other purchases and leases. Number 10, dual agency acknowledgement acceptance. I don't do dual agency. Some people do, but to me, it doesn't make sense, because how can a person be loyal to two sides in the same transaction? And you can't. If I'm your agent and I'm obligated to tell you anything that's to your benefit that I find out about the seller on the other side of the transaction, then I want to be able to do just that. Just like if I'm the listing agent, I need to be able to be loyal to the side that I'm working for, and that's it. I'm not going to say, okay, I'll do dual agency and do both sides to be able to get a commission. No, that's not the way it works. Not with me. I'm either with you or I'm against you. Just like the good book said, you're either with me or against me. Jesus said it. So, I go down here to number 11 is non-discrimination. No discrimination here. If you want to buy a house in any neighborhood, I'm not going to stop you. I don't care what the demographics are. It's totally up to you. And if I'm the listing agent, I'm not going to stop somebody from moving into the neighborhood that they want to be in. I understand, and I just won't. Clause 12, failure to close transaction. Now, if a seller, landlord, in an agreement made on behalf of the client fails to close such agreement with no fault on the part of the client, then the compensation due broker in paragraph 7 shall be waived. If such transaction fails to close because of any fault on the part of the client, the total amount owing as compensation shall be immediately due and payable to the brokerage by the client. So if we put in here that you were paying 3%, this has nothing to do with the deposit. It has to do with the 3%, because remember, the deposit is non-refundable, but you won't owe 3% if you get to the point to where you just don't close and it's not your fault. Now, if you just back out for something that at the end you just change your mind and there's no justification in it, then hey, you owe, but you will know whether it's reasonable or not. And if it's not, I've never had anybody have to pay the 3% just to be paying the 3%. I always walk away. But you just never know. That's why you have to be careful who you sign a contract with. It's not the contract itself. It's what's in the contract and who you sign it with. Because sometimes people play for keeps. So, say further close. Disclosure number 13. Disclosure of designated agent's role. And that is where you know that you're being represented by your agent. And that's what I'm telling you now. I won't be a dual agent. I'm going to be your agent, and I'm a designated agent. You won't be dealing with some other agent in my office. If so, you would know, and you would have to sign for that. But I've never worked with other agents before. I'm a solo agent, and the only other party that may be involved at all would be my broker, unless for some reason I'm unable to make it to a showing and I get somebody to open the door for you and let you in and get to see the house on your time. Number 14, cost of services or products obtained from outside sources. Designated agent, broker, or supervisory agent, collectively broker parties, will not obtain or order products or services from the outside sources on client's behalf unless client agrees in writing to pay for them immediately when the payment is due. Examples: survey, environmental studies, inspections, soil tests, title reports, engineering studies. In the event broker provides the client the names or sources of such advice or assistance, client acknowledges and agrees that the broker parties do not warrant or guarantee the services and or the products. So we can't be responsible for somebody else's work. And I will refer you to inspectors that I believe would do a good job, contractors that I believe would do a good job. But at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for their work. Agents just aren't responsible for somebody else's job, just like those contractors wouldn't be responsible for my job. I already went to clause 15, indemnification of broker. Number 16, condition of property. That's what we have an inspection for. An inspection period is the time for you to back out. And that's how you find out the condition of the property. If you decide to waive the inspection, then that is solely your choice. It's your option. You don't have to have an inspection. It's not required, but I highly recommend that you do, because it could be very pricey going forward if you don't. I've had maybe 3 clients that waived inspection, and only one pretty much had, well, actually 2 had problems with the house. I recommend you get an inspection, but it's not my obligation. I'm going to definitely have you sign saying that you don't want one, because I'm saying get one. Broker parties' duties to client. The duties of the broker parties include, but are not limited to, the following: confidentiality. Your information should be secure with your agent. Obedience. The broker party shall follow the specific directions of the client in representing the client's position in any negotiations. Now, remind you, this is in negotiations. This is not like a license for you to just boss your agent around, especially against the recommendations or the suggestions of the agent. If I'm telling you that this might not be a good property to see, you can't force me to show you, although I'm going to show you because I don't want you to feel like you missed out on something. But I'm only telling you for good reason, because I'm trying to make this search efficient and as effective as possible. Reasonable care and diligence. The broker party shall, in all dealings with the client, exercise reasonable care and shall act with diligence in all matters in the best interest of the client. D, accountability of funds. If you give your agent some money, normally it's only going to be for EMD, the earnest money deposit. The earnest money deposit, by law, is required to be delivered to the brokerage as soon as possible. So there should be no mishandling of your funds. And then once it's submitted to the brokerage, which typically nowadays you might be turning it in to the title company, and there might be a secure link for you to do so. So your agent might not even have to handle any of your funds. But if that's not the case, and you do have to give the money to your broker, to your agent, then it should be turned into the brokerage and then deposited immediately into the brokerage's escrow account, where it will serve as a credit to you at closing. Loyalty. We talked about loyalty. That's why I won't do dual agency. And disclosure. Excepting in the case of disclosure dual agency, the broker party shall disclose to the client any information he or she may hold in regard to the other party in the transaction which would benefit the client in negotiating with the other party. So anything that I find out that's beneficial to you, you'll know. We talked about client responsibility, consent to disclosure, broker party's role, the entire agreement is actually a contract, and we are both, you and your agent are both bound to the terms of the agreement. Class action waiver, arbitration, and other terms. Other terms is where you might usually find, unless you're dealing with a broker who has a specific contract already designed, but we will put compliance fee under other. And anything that's specific. So basically, the contract is to protect both parties. It's to protect you. You are out here looking for properties and don't know exactly what to do. You might not have access to the systems that your agent will have. You can look on Zillow if you want to, but when you look on Zillow, you're not going to see all of the properties that you won't know. You won't know because there's a lot of scams going on these days, and anybody can go on Zillow and list a property. I've had people call me about properties that I listed that somebody went on Zillow and found for rent, and I know they weren't being rented out. I've had people go on Zillow and ask me about houses for sale that I had listed a long time ago, and I knew the house wasn't for sale anymore. But people have their ways of doing things, just like you want to be careful when you go to the title company and you get ready to close. You'll get wiring instructions, especially like with the cash deal. and the wiring instructions might come from an outside source. That's a scam, and they're having you to reroute your funds and send them to them. And when you go to closing, your money's not there and you're done. To avoid those kind of problems, get a good agent and do what your agent asks you to do. It's not hard, and you don't have to see a bunch of houses. You see what you need to see to make an informed decision, and make it. Don't make it harder than it has to be. If I can be of assistance, you can reach me at 248-891-3876. I'm James White. I'm a seller's rep specialist. I'm a military relocation professional, a relocation specialist, period, and an accredited buyer's representative.